This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
I do want to, I guess we have to address what was sort of explicitly said in the movie and not, but in the spring of 86, a wealthy philanthropist and donor makes some efforts to try to reach Mark. The man, of course, is John DuPont. He wants to recruit Mark and try to make him a wrestling coach at Villanova University. And this is where they maybe take some creative liberties with the actual events, I guess, that just help the movie flow a little better. But years before the whole Foxcatcher thing happens, DuPont is trying to put together a wrestling program, and it's unsuccessful. And on Christmas Day, DuPont fired Mark like on Christmas Day. This is a weird story. When do you first hear of this DuPont character?
Well, I didn't know that John tried to start the club before 1986. I thought that Mark joined and Mark was a part of it for a year before Dave joined on. So I'm not sure about the beginning of the club and when John wanted to start it or when he fired Mark. I know that Mark left Team Foxcatcher, and that was, I think, in 1988, right after the Olympics. He had a very poor Olympic performance, and it had a lot to do with John. John was all over him. John was obsessed with Mark. He didn't want to leave him go. He was always around him, suffocating him, just got on Mark's nerves. And Mark was the kind of guy that you didn't want to get on his nerves. He had a short temper. So, with John just trying to be around him all the time and trying to gloat about, hey, I'm with Mark Schultz. And, it just got really old for Mark, and Mark just decided he was done with it. And this is around the time Dave, John DuPont contacted Dave as well to be a coach at Foxcatcher. So Mark left and Dave came in.
It's weird because it feels like depending on, which piece of media you select to hear this story, Mark is not included. In fact, I don't even think he's in the Netflix documentary. Any speculation why they don't discuss the Mark piece of the story at all?
I'm not sure who did the documentary. If it was the Schultz family that did it, I'm sure Mark would have been involved in the documentary. I'm not sure if this came from DuPont's side or a production company that didn't contact the Schultz family. They just want to do the documentary. I don't know. But for Mark not to be part of a documentary about his brother Dave is really unheard of. I'm not sure why that didn't happen.
So apparently DuPont had his sights set not only on Mark, but on David too. And David had been coaching, as an assistant coach at the University of Oklahoma. And even at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. But eventually he goes from just helping with the DuPont program to actually moving to Pennsylvania to help run a new training center that John DuPont had constructed. And of course, this is the famous Foxcatcher facility. When did you first hear about Foxcatcher and that everybody was going to Pennsylvania?
Well, when Dave joined, that was the first time I heard about it. It was in the wrestling newspapers. Team Foxcatcher just started. John DuPont started a club. Dave Schultz is one of the coaches. It's going to be premier wrestling club. All the best wrestlers in the world will be part of it. And it was a lot of news in the amateur wrestling community. So John DuPont started a lot of buzz in amateur wrestling. And this was a great opportunity for everyone that could join that club. It would be very, very beneficial on their careers.
Kurt, I'm going to veer into a territory here that's a little weird to say out loud, but just humor me. In wrestling, it's not a polite term, but in wrestling these days, well, I guess forever, guys have said, oh, you got to go see so-and-so. There's money in them their heels. That guy's a money mark. John DuPont was an amateur money mark, right?
Yes. John DuPont, he wanted to be involved in wrestling when his mother was still alive, but she wouldn't allow him to. And when she passed away is when John started the club. So he actually waited for his mother to pass away before he started, but he wanted to have a club. He was a big mark for amateur wrestling. He was a mark for sports. And John had other clubs. He had a swimming club. He had a pentathlon club, wrestling club, state-of-the-art facilities right on the farm where his mansion was. It was incredible.
You know, you're from Pennsylvania, so when there is an eccentric person like this in the area, it feels like people would talk. Did you ever do you remember hearing anything about the DuPont family, good or bad, before you actually became acquainted with the Foxcatcher concept?
I just knew that the DuPont family was the family that, or invented gunpowder for the Civil War. They supplied it. So that's how the name became really big. And DuPont, DuPont Chemicals, DuPont Foods, there's just so many, it's just a popular name. And John's a descendant of that. And, knowing that, that John has a great deal of money, and he contributed a lot of that money to wrestling.
Yeah, a great deal of money is right. It's estimated at the time he was worth at least $200 million. And here's how Variety described the relationship with John and Dave. DuPont was a lonely, socially inept prince desperate to be embraced by his tough, world-class athletes as quote unquote one of them. And Dave, sympathetic to the man's strangeness and dependent on him for support for not only himself, but his wife, kids, and the athletes he'd recruited on DuPont's behalf, was his favorite. An open-hearted bear of a man who not only embodied the athletic greatness DuPont himself coveted, but humored the wealthy philanthropist's own wrestling dreams, going so far as to coach him in competitions for which, as old videos expose, he was thoroughly unfit. Can you speak to that? Do you think this is a fair assessment of DuPont, that he was lonely and socially inept and really wanted to be one of the boys?
I think so. I mean, John didn't have a lot of friends. And I think that, him reaching out to the amateur wrestling community, to the swimming community, the pentathlon community, it was for him to partake in, communication with other people. John was a loner. He lived on his mansion on his farm, and didn't have a lot of contact with a lot of people. And he was very private. And so I could imagine that John was a lonely man, and that's probably why he started these clubs.
Is it true that they did like this, I guess, a fake tournament where guys would come in and quote unquote do the job for John DuPont to feel like he was a accomplished wrestler?
Well, I could tell you what I saw. This is unbelievable. We were in Bulgaria, and John funded the Olympic team in Bulgaria. He actually brought over their very best wrestler to train us. His name was Valentin Jordanov. And so he was funding the Bulgarian Olympic team for the Olympics that was coming up in 1996. This was 1995. And we had a tournament over there, and in Bulgaria, the arena was probably 15,000 seats. It was packed. And, we all wrestled in the tournament. And John DuPont, at the end, he had a match, a special match. And our coaches went over to the Bulgarian wrestler that he was going to wrestle. He was a former Olympian. He was retired. And they told him, hey, can you do the job for John? We'll pay you a few $1,000s. And he agreed to it. And John went out there, and this is after the tournament was over, and the crowd knew that John was funding the Bulgarian Olympic team, so they were behind John. They were cheering him on. So they were cheering for John over their own hometown Bulgarian. And the thing is, John was so horrible that he would pull the wrestler on top of him and fall to his back and give up points. And the Bulgarian's trying to give up points himself. So the Bulgarian would flip over to his back, and John would roll on top of him, and then John would flip onto his back, and the Bulgarian would roll on top of him. It wasn't wrestling. It looked like two little kids playing, rolling around the yard. It was hilarious. And the thing is, the Bulgarian was trying to get John to win, and John just kept giving up points, and John kept was behind on points. And thank God at the end of the match, Bulgarian gave up 3 points and John won 13-12. And the guy worked harder at losing than he did at winning. And John, the Bulgarians picked him up in the air, carried him around the arena, and the fans went nuts. And it was like, holy shit, I can't believe I just witnessed a fixed wrestling match. So the thing is, John DuPont wanted to be like Dave. He wanted to wrestle like Dave. He wanted to act and talk like Dave. He even would teach us technique like Dave. Obviously, he wasn't very good at it. He didn't know what he was talking about. He'd show us something. We were like looking at Dave like, Dave's just let him go. Let him do this. So, Dave was trying to keep John happy. And, John was just wanted to do everything that Dave did. And John was infatuated with Dave Schultz. And I think that was the issue of why John ended up killing Dave.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.